My name is Matthew Todd, and welcome to Inside the Scale Up. This is the podcast for founders and executives in tech looking to make an impact and learn from their peers within the tech business. We lift the lid on tech businesses, interviewing leaders and following their journey from startup to scale up and beyond, covering everything from developing product market fit, funding and fundraising models to value proposition structure and growth marketing. We learn from their journey so that you can understand how they really work, the failures, the successes, the lessons along the way, so that you can take their learnings and apply them within your own startup or scale up and join the ever-growing list of high-growth UK SaaS businesses. Hey, and welcome back to the podcast here this morning with Daniel Shoar. As always, I'll let the guests introduce themselves, tell you about their company, what it is they do. But no, thank you for joining me this morning. Thank you for taking the time.
It's a pleasure. I appreciate having me on the podcast, and I look forward to explaining my journey so far as an entrepreneur over the last 8 years. It's been an uncommon one, for better or worse, and I've gotten to be able to see some cool things with my first venture, which I've moved on from now. But my new company, Bukit, is essentially a alert startup, similar to Airbnb in its simplicity, but it's basically selling services, so selling units of time as inventory. So any service provider, ranging from a chiropractor to a mental health professional, tennis lesson, golf lesson, hair salon, massage, spa, all in one app aggregator so that the user can find what they need. And it's a 2-click process. We make it like Amazon, just easy peasy. And eventually the users will get loyalty, for their use. We expect the retention rate to be quite high because, let's face it, who likes calling the hair salon and asking for a haircut at 2:30 and then showing up and having them say that it's 2:45. Sorry. So this saves you that trouble, and we think that we have something that's simple but that works everywhere. So scalable, and that's the challenge with my newest startup. But I learned a lot of lessons on the road prior to this during my first startup, which eventually led me here.
Awesome. No, I think it's really, really kind of interesting to hear. And you're right. Your journey is not a common one, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs will benefit from hearing what you've got to say about your approach. But before we get into the kind of the details of Bukit, the stage that's at, you mentioned your previous venture and journey before. It'd be good to hear a bit more about your background and what it is that led you to this point.
Yeah, so I've kind of dabbled in everything. I was a sports writer for a paper in Dubai for 5 years. I worked for a distributor as a incorporate. Worked for an oil and gas company in Houston. Eventually decided, what, my destiny is to be an entrepreneur. I am not very good at listening to other people, so therefore I decided to co-found my first startup, which was Golfscape. It was started in 2014. We are the market leaders in 35 destinations, basically Expedia for golf. But during that time, I spent 330 days a year on average on the road, but in the best places in the world, so can't complain. But during that time, I did learn a lot about what it means to be an entrepreneur and what it means to scale.
Yeah, and what were some of those things that you saw kind of being on the road so much?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that entrepreneurs need to understand is that in order to sell to the end user, ultimately, which is your customer who is selling to the end user, so you need to know what they want. You need to know what they both want. You have to understand them on a different kind of professional. It's not just USA professional. It's Thai professional. And Thai professional is not the same as USA professional. And you have to actually live that, over time. So, when I lived a year in Bangkok, but I would get a car, get a condo in Saturn, live amongst the Thais, so I could truly empathize with them and truly be able to identify their drivers and their motivators on an emotional plus cultural scale. Yeah. And from that, I was allowed to this blessing that allowed me to find commonality. And when you find commonality, that's when business can be done. And even if you have to go hire a Thai or hire an Indonesian high revenue is because that's the only way to be effective, then you do it. But at least you find the right people. And that is, I think, the other part of being an entrepreneur is that people mistake, a lot of people, and I had my friend come to me the other day saying this. He was retweeting like an Elon Musk thing, and one of the quotes saying is that technical, the technical aspects of a business should be run by technical people.
Yeah.
And I said, yes, that's absolutely true. But the CEO does not have to be that technical person. That's the CTO's job. The CEO's job is two things. One, it's being a salesman, first and foremost, because you're always selling. Either you're selling your product, or you're selling to the talent, or you're selling to the investors, or you're selling to the end user. It doesn't matter. You're selling, right? So you're a salesman, and then the other half of your job is fundraising, and then finding talent. And you just kind of split the two, and hopefully you can get your fundraise over, within 6 to 9 months, and be able to actually achieve milestones that are meaningful. But regardless, it's a race. When you come up with an idea that's new, that isn't a copycat, it's a race to first always. So we are going to be very strategic in how we build our software. In fact, we're very lucky in that, and I'm not supposed to mention these people's names, but let's just say a large competitor of ours happens to be backed by the same fund that we are backed by.
Yeah.
So I know these gentlemen, and the mistakes that they've made thus far, I not to criticize, because they've done a great job, obviously raising quite a bit of money, but they have made some mistakes that are fundamentally wrong, in my opinion. And for me, my job is to make something better. So as a disruptor, I am, seeing what their flaws are, and then addressing them in a way that's automated, in the way that the robot says so, and it's no mistakes. There's no accountants telling me that, the financial controller is not there, and they're not answering my emails. No, it's the computer. It's a statement. 80% goes in one account, 20% goes in the other account. Pretty simple. It gets deposited, via an API, and the robot does not make mistakes. So this process isn't really being used. They're paying them monthly. Like, do you think that the service providers are happy with that? They're not. And on top of that, critically, the fundamental mistake that they made is that whenever a user goes to like the Instagram of, a spa or whatever, masseuse or whatever, they are going to find a link, Fresh Up. But all it's going to do is take them to a place where they can message the person. And then all of that transaction is done offline. Fresh Up gets nothing. So they go acquire the user, they spend money, but none of the revenue goes to them. It doesn't actually take them to a method of booking. So, I mean, these are all just fundamental, like basic mistakes. You would look at them and you would say, okay, wrong, and if the people that are raising 200 million are doing this, and I have a much better way, then it would be a shame for me not to try.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting. You mentioned a couple of things there. You obviously mentioned the revenue generation element of the business, but you also mentioned it's important to win, to be first, or to be the biggest, or have the most
Scale
reach.
Quickly and scale with an infrastructure that's built to scale. So the layer of it is something that is fundamentally useful in terms of the data, which is connected through various APIs so that the computer does all the work. That's the challenge here, is that you've got to have automation. And automation becomes complicated when you have too much data. So when you have too much data, then you have to aggregate the data properly. And then when you aggregate the data and you have a huge sample size, then it's time to analyze the data, and then it's time to do what the data tells you to do, right? And hopefully we have that problem soon, because that means we've had a lot of success. But the goal right now is not to give the end user an easier way to book. The goal is to give the service provider a usable operating system that is both automated and efficient, and it maximizes the revenue with the least amount of actual human input, That's my goal. Let them use that.
Yeah.
Let them gain revenue. Let them gain users. And I will do my part on the other end of actually driving the traffic.
Sure. So, with the type of platform that you've got, obviously, it's essentially a two-sided marketplace. You've got the service providers, you've got the consumers of the services.
Invisible. It's an invisible marketplace, I call it. Yeah. There's the
Why
end
do you call it
user and
invisible?
there's the customer. Yeah.
Yeah. And how do you get scale when you've got to build up both sides, right? You can't have customers if there's no one for them to go to, and likewise the service providers, they need to
So
be on board in order to attract those people.
we have to be very efficient in how we scale, and the means that we use our method is actually very quick. So going to a new market with the right amount of capital and understanding the market and speaking the right languages and having the right team behind you, using an inside-out approach, I don't think it's too difficult given the method that we're using, which unfortunately is our secret sauce that we can't reveal just yet.
Yeah, I see, but scale is what you're building for from the outset.
We're building something on the SaaS on the back end basis, whether it's our database or the actual operators operating system, which we have no control over whatsoever. Either that whole entire base level is built on an automated scale for everything, whether it's geolocation, where are they booking, how many times are they booking, are they members, do they buy promotion, everything's being tracked. All of that data is being recorded both within the CRM of the service provider, but also our database, so that we can effectively drive traffic and new users to these various service providers, because ultimately, who's going to turn down a new user, right? That's more money.
Yeah. So you're giving those
economy. Yeah, it's more about just generating more activity, right? Finding services that you didn't know you wanted. That's what we aim to give.
I see. So discovery as a kind of awareness building as well as the direct thing they came for.
Exactly that, and also just the ease of booking, right? If you're used to booking online, then you're used to 9 clicks. That's no good. If you're used to not calling on the phone, well, hang up the phone. Pick up the app, and do the 2-click process, and you're done. And you don't have to wait.
Yeah.
So this is what we're offering, and we're offering this, in quite possibly the easiest way with the right partners. I might add, we have deals with Priceline, Booking.com, Forbes, Virgin, ESSEC, Venture Incubator, Greenfield 365 is a partner of ours, a number of AWS, Stripe, a number of different partners that are helping us as we scale, because they believe in the mission. And as a result, less capital is needed, which is obviously good for us.
Yeah. So those partnerships are pretty important then to helping you on that scaling approach.
Yeah. So in general, I generally like to establish trust between partners that I work with, and I don't see a reason why that we should reinvent the wheel. We should just find the wheel that is usable and go and pay for it, basically, and go partner with them and say, okay, listen, we're going to white label what you built. You built it pretty much what we wanted to build. You get half of what we get. Let's push it out first, because there's 3 ways to win. It's be first, be smartest, or cheat. And I don't cheat.
Yeah.
So and although I like to think that I'm smart, I'm actually kind of stupid. So I got to be first. And being first is just, Airbnb was overlooked. This is overlooked. Well, I had my eye open, and that is the only thing that I have going for me. But that is a huge advantage in the startup world, because agility is where you benefit the most. The guys that have raised 200 are the guys that are in trouble, because they're going to have to bug fix everything. And there's no easy fix for that. They're going to end up having to either dump their system or revamp the framework. I mean, if they built it 5 years ago, they're in a lot of trouble. Let's put it that way. We don't have
Yeah.
that problem. For us, building like from the ground up with already having done it before, my IP is in my head.
Yeah.
It's quite a bit faster. The lead time is a lot quicker, and on top of that, we know exactly what the customer wants. And so when we give them what we want before they ask for it, that's when they start to use it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it sounds like your kind of previous experience and then leading into this as well. Really, the most important thing that most founders overlook is knowing those customers, knowing that audience at a pretty deep level. Would you say?
Well, I'd say one of the biggest mistakes founders make, especially as they try to scale, is not listening to their customer. What you need to do is go and aggregate the data. In my case, it was golf courses, so it was niche. But in Spain, they had the Costa del Golf, which was about 85 golf courses. I would go and visit all 85, and I'd say, what would you like out of a system? I would do the same thing in Bangkok and visit 100 golf courses. I would go to
Yeah.
Khao Yai. I would go to Chai Mang. I would go to Vietnam, Da Nang. I would go to Indonesia, Bali. There we were a monopoly in Bali, in Jakarta, in Bogor. All these places that this adventure took me on. Cape Town, where there's 500 courses in South Africa. I didn't know anything about golf. I'm not a golf guy. I honestly, if I had to choose between golf and a pinky, like a full 4 day of golf, I'd say goodbye to the pinky because that 4 day would be pretty boring. So I'm not a golf guy, but what I am is an opportunist, and also I saw a gap. There was a gap in the market. Nobody was doing this. Okay, let's give it a shot. But frankly, it's just not something that brought the passion out of me, and it's not big enough. I want to go for first prize, not whatever, the consolation prize. You gave it a shot. Try. No, let's go for all of it. It's a lot more fun to have that mentality because when you do have that mentality, you have to stay running because if you're not running, then someone's catching up, and you don't need to look back. You need to look forward, and you need to look where you are on the ground right now. But you need to focus on your own business, do what you believe in, and move quick because that's what all investors want to see. They just want to see that it can be replicated. Once that's been proven, then efficiencies of scale will come into play, and you can start to become profitable. It's more about proving that you have this proof of concept in multi-currency, multi language, multi versions of technology being used, everything. The good news is, again, my first one is on 5 continents, so I've made all the mistakes. And what took me a long time to learn as a 8-year guy, 330 days living in a suitcase, it was mistakes are just as valuable as successes. Because when you make a mistake, you just don't make it again, right? If you make it twice, fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, shame on you, but or vice versa. But bottom line is, you should be, making mistakes. You fail forward. It's better to learn. It's often more effective and more impactful to make a mistake, feel the pain, and just never do it again. Whereas, not make the mistake, not do it exactly right, and then just have it be a problem moving forward. It's very important to embrace mistakes. It's very important to fail forward. It's very important not to change your mindset because there are going to be dark days. The startup world is just a roller coaster ride, and you got to make your peace with that because if you don't, it's not for you. And especially after 8 years, you become numb to it. But the bottom line is, that's what every great person who went and achieved something big like this, they pay their dues. Jeff Bezos went at it for 20 years, lost money. Finally, it hit.
Yeah.
Musk was weeks away from losing, from Tesla being out of cash. Guess what? He's the richest person in the world. I mean, things change, right? You get lucky, things change. And like I said to you previously, I've always been lucky.
Yeah, but I think that, comes down to the effort that you put in. And I think those two things are related, because I see a lot of earlier stage founders, especially first time founders, that they won't do that deep level to understand their customer. And I think part of it is fear based. They don't want anyone to tell them that the vision for their idea is wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and and that's a mistake. It's better to go and hear you're wrong. Actually, it's the opposite. Go and hear you're wrong from everybody, and then you'll know you're building it wrong.
So would you seek out people to talk to that you think may not actually agree?
I go deep. So I go through a deep dive on every operating like SaaS SOP that they put in place in all the various markets, and then I hire people that were local to those markets that I incentivize by using equity as I wouldn't pay them more than they were making, and they were vested over 2 years. So I vested over 4 years, but 2 year cliff. So they were loyal to the company, and I had to know them for a year, and they had to work for me for free for a year. And I had hired 10 people this way, and they all did the same thing. They believed in our mission. And once that happens, then I can trust them and leave them 9 hours outside of me actually being able to have my eye on them and still be confident that they're doing their job. And that's the reason why we're the market leader in 35 destinations. It wasn't by accident. It was 8 years of work, and it was 8 years of hiring the right people, the right talent at the right time. And most of that was coaching the best talent from your best clients, because it tends to be the ones who use your stuff, your technology, that perform better. So obviously they're the ones that you're going to poach. And when you do poach those people, you still have a great relationship with the golf club, because as long as you maintain their revenue growth, they don't care either.
Yeah. It's been kind of pretty foundational then to, as you said, to find those right hires, to get those people to buy in to that version.
Was the birth of Bukit, frankly.
Yeah.
Hearing that from the golf instructors from 5 continents, why can I not sell my service of golf of teaching golf on your site? Why can I not have my own white label website with a widget? And why can I not have an app? And why can I not be able to have a SaaS to organize my own schedule? And I said to myself, if 5 continents worth of golf instructors are saying that, then let's look at the big picture here. Uber, right, when it started, it was just a ride-hailing service. Now look what it is. Without Uber Eats, they would be dead. They have a million different things on Uber, and it's because of necessity, because that's what people want. It's time to get with the times, right? People want the all-in-one apps. Nobody wants to go to a niche website for each little service.
Yeah.
They want to bundle it, and they want to save more money, and they want to eventually get deals with, and be loyal, similar to they are with the OTAs. That hasn't happened yet, and I am the first one that spotted it. And let's hope that, people that are chasing me aren't as good, because let's put it this way. I've had an inside peek. I'm not going to say who or when or why, but let's just say I've seen my competition, and I'm up for the challenge.
Awesome. No, that sounds great. So I guess with that in mind, then, with your competition in mind, what are your kind of launch plans? How are you planning on getting ahead of them, and how big do you want it to be?
Figure out all the friction that the customers are facing and immediately address those problems with your new technology.
So better experience.
Every single problem they have, you aggregate it and you build it so that it's configurable within their system, so that it addresses everything that they need before they even ask for it.
Yeah. And so your vision for Bukit, then, you talked about wanting it to be number one. How big do you want this business to be? What is your ambition?
All of it. I want the big prize. First place. Whatever that is. If it's an IPO, it's an IPO. If it's an acquisition, it's not an acquisition. It's an IPO.
Yeah.
I'm going for first place. Let's see if we get there. I mean, you got to dream big, right?
Yeah. And do you have time frames in mind, or you just kind of head down focused on launching big, staying ahead?
Yeah, we've had a couple of setbacks, and this is something that every first time founder especially, but any founder and entrepreneur is going to face, is that thing. You're going to get hit with some curveballs that you weren't expecting. In my case, my co-founder, who I found through my Harvard network, actually ended up in Kiev in January, so out of commission. It's obviously very difficult to operate without a co-founder, especially given the amount of work I delegated.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, they decided to throw me another wrench when my CTO, who's Ethiopian in Addis Ababa, the only other conflict zone in the world right now, he gets hit with bombs on the road and no internet. So it's
Yeah.
a nice little 1-2 punch. But hey, you got to roll with the punches, right? That's what the CEO is supposed to do: is make sure that whatever happens, the company survives.
Yeah.
And when you have the right people surrounding you in terms of board members, advisors, investors, friends that want to see you succeed, partners, everyone that's involved, they will give you the push that you need, when you need it, because it's in their best interest, right? Whenever
Yeah.
someone puts advisor and board member on Golfscape on their LinkedIn, and they're work for a top 2 law firm in the United States, they want that to mean something. They don't want it to mean it went to zero. So it's important to have people like that in your corner, because obviously at some point a tax attorney would be a pretty good idea if we do win.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think that comes back to what you were talking about earlier, which is, aligning interests with people that you work with, finding people that are buying into that, and where you're just not, another person that they're talking to that they might hope to bring them business or whatever it may be.
Yeah, the best way that I can describe why we're innovating is just add up the number of differentiators. When you start adding up and the number becomes 10 or 15, guess what? You've started innovating. Now you've
Yeah.
started something new that nobody's really thought of, because you've thought of 15 different things that they were doing wrong or weren't doing at all. Once you
Mm.
do that, it's called innovation. When you put all that together and you give it to the service provider, and you actually allow the network effect to take place, and the spillover effect, and you have barbers telling other barbers, this will all happen as long as we take the next door approach, which is just find the neighborhoods that are converting at a higher rate than the average, and go
Yeah.
and focus all of our efforts on those, and then get the boroughs nearby, the surrounding boroughs, so that it people talk about it, and we see more and more repeat visitors, higher retention rate, which ultimately leads to a higher LTV, lifetime value of the customer,
Yeah.
and that adds more value to the service that we're providing to the actual the haircut, or whoever it is that's actually completing the service, right? So we're doing a favor on both ends. We're taking the hit on the by doing all the tech for them and paying for the marketing, but at the same time, now we have a new customer we can sell for.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It makes a lot of sense, and I think that kind of point on differentiation is key. I think not enough, startups, scale ups actually seek to have that point of differentiation, especially when they have competitors. They're almost too busy comparing themselves to competitors that they think.
Yeah, you see clones. Like if you go to Dubai, you're going to get Kareem, which is a clone of Uber. You go to
Yeah.
Souq, you get a clone of Amazon. Their goal is to get acquired for 1 bill or whatever, and that's it. That's not my goal, right? I was based in Dubai. We started something new, but it was new in like a really bad industry, and I wanted something bigger. And this is something that I just listened to my customers. I said, you know what? If they're all saying it, they must be onto something. The demand is there.
Awesome. No, I think that's fantastic, and obviously wish you the best in launching and getting that scale that you're looking for. Is there any other kind of advice that you give to people in your position, whether it's their first startup or second startup, or even on that scaling journey?
Sure.
Are there any other things that you've learned, mistakes you've made that you kind of like to get across?
What I would do, and this is something that I embrace wholeheartedly. So, yo hablas español todos los tiempo en español. I only speak Spanish in Spain. I force myself so that they correct me, and I eventually get it right. solo expedición. I embrace all of my trips, 6 to 8 trips. I'll get a car and an apartment in Saturn and live like a Thai for 8 weeks. That will allow me the empathy, compassion, like compatibility, being able to properly identify with them on a both emotional, cultural, and professional level that will ultimately induce behavior that is in my favor. And I learned that across the world because I embraced it across the world. I embraced living like a local.
Yeah.
I drove everywhere I went, no matter where. I drove from Lisbon to Marbella about 35 times. I drove from Cape Town to Port Elizabeth maybe 40 times. That's a 12-hour drive off the coast of the tip of Africa, and it's one of the most beautiful drives in the world. But it's also one of the most dangerous drives you've ever seen in your life. But it's still worth it.
Yeah.
And these are things that you just can't teach. I can tell you about it, but it's not going to mean anything until you see it, until you live it. And then once you live it enough, it just becomes like second nature. And once you have that feeling, you're able to identify with these other South Africans. And that's just what it took. It took a year's worth of going and really, really trying to integrate myself with society, because everything is, I'm not going to say correlated, everything is interrelated, right? No matter what company or business or industry you're in, whatever their operating procedure is could impact what you might want to do with your company. It's important to understand that from all scales, right? We're not talking about just one industry, one niche product in one small neighborhood. No, we're talking about this worldwide thing where we're trying to identify mistakes and build something so that those mistakes can never occur, because the robot is doing it all for us. And that's the most important thing about why I decided on the strategy of partnering up with both a fintech and another kind of HubSpot CRM type company, because why am I going to go waste another 6 months trying to develop something that's not my core competency anyway? Let me do what's my core competency, what I've already done before. That's going to take me the least amount of time. You just integrate, we'll white label, and then we'll do a rev share, and it's fair for everybody. And now we're all aligned. All of our interests are aligned. Everyone has to sell the same product to make money. So now we have 3 companies wanting to sell the same product. Guess what? That's 3 times the number of potential customers.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. And I think the point you say about the things that you can't teach, that you have to experience, and you have to understand how the businesses you're selling to work. You have to kind of, it's not all about you and your company. It's not even just about your customers. It's also about their businesses.
Any human, live it.
Yeah,
live it to the max, because you only get one shot at this thing. I've never seen anyone come back from the dead, and I don't expect that to happen in my lifetime either. So, try. People are people. If you set your mind on something and you just try really hard, you realize life really isn't as hard as it seems. People always worry too much about the worst things happening, and sure they do happen, but they also underestimate their ability to recover when those things do happen.
Absolutely, and I think people also overestimate how much other people are thinking about them when actually they're thinking about themselves more, and that fear, I think, holds people back from immersing themselves, as you say.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's just a fear of change, and nobody likes change. Nobody likes to be uncomfortable, and sadika, you deal with the Thai stuff like that. You're gonna have to deal with all of the. Man, in Bali, it's a whole different world. But anyway, I mean, basically every single one of these little idiosyncrasies, like in South Africa, they'll call streets lights robots, and then they'll just tell you at the robots take a left, and you just say like, "What the hell is he talking about, robots?" And then you'll see like a traffic lights like, "Oh, robots," and these are just things that again, how are you supposed to teach this? You live it. I can't, I can't possibly explain my entire life, living in Cape Town over the course of a year, maybe 12 to 15 trips, traveling across the world. I mean, I've been everywhere, right? I've been lucky. I went to high school in Dubai and Burj Al Arab. I'm one of those expat brats that had his prom the first year Burj Al Arab opened, and I got lucky, and that's a blessing that, in spite of how stupid I am, it allows me to have a different perspective on the world, which is something unique that people just don't get this opportunity. And it's a shame for me to waste it.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great place to wrap things up for today. I no doubt we'll have other conversations in the future, and I look forward to getting you on and hearing how that growth journey is going. But I think it's been really great to talk to you. I think there's a lot entrepreneurs should take from this on understanding people, understanding their customer base at a human level, going deep and not being afraid of failure.
And if they want to check out, I have a column on Forbes, and I write weekly columns on Forbes, possibly maybe a link in bio type thing.
Yeah, we can drop links to anywhere that's relevant where people can find you.
Yeah, so people might get a little bit better understanding of my story, just and how it's evolved over time, because your perspective certainly does change when you see certain things. I'll tell you that, or when you live certain things, rather.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well, wish you the best of luck with Bukit, and thank you again for taking the time this morning.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Inside the Scale Up. Remember, for the show notes and in-depth resources from today's guest, you can find these on the website insidethescaleup.com. You can also leave feedback on today's episode, as well as suggest guests and companies you'd like to hear from. Thank you for listening.